coach who is not distracted is actually connecting with his or her potential clients and moving them towards conversations, whether it's in a group setting or one-on-one setting, and it's going towards a proposal.
7% of your time in your coaching business should be going towards clienting.
It sounds very straightforward, sounds very ridiculously simple, but it is actually quite simple. The reason we complicate it is because it's uncomfortable.
It's an emotional feeling we get of overwhelm or resistance because we are not comfortable in this new identity, in this new skill set, in this new world, this new business. It's a business of how to do those things.
A lot of times we think we are thinking, we're not. Like when we're in this mode where, oh, I'm building a whole system in complexity, we're thinking long term. We're not. We're just delaying the short term thing that's uncomfortable.
Hello, Coaches Nation. We're here. I'm here, Daniel Fernandez, and with my co-host Faisal Ansan. We're here on the Coach's Journey podcast, and today is a really important topic that might not sound important, but you'll see how important it is when we get into it, which is, are you a distracted coach? That is the topic for today. It sounds pretty simple and obvious, but it's not. I'm really excited to get into this with Faisal because we've both been distracted coaches and still are sometimes. I would say for myself, but what does distracted even mean? And are you distracted? And what impact does that have in your business? And what can you do about it? Some of the things we're going to talk about today. And I think we're going to tell some interesting stories about ourselves around how that has fit into our lives over the journey of coaching over the last decade plus. So,
yeah, for sure. And I mean, we want to start with the frame that any coach can be distracted at any time. And there's not a judgment in the sense that, oh, you're a distracted coach, but we're trying to get you to become aware of certain things that we all do without realizing it. And it's not actually helping us to move forward. Both Daniel and I have been distracted in the past. Mostly because we didn't know what to do, what to focus on, and we're hoping that through this conversation you might understand what are the things that give you a lot more leverage, the projects, the tasks for you to move your business forward, for you to develop mastery in your coaching business and your skill sets as a coach in your coaching business. But before we jump into that, if you're listening to this outside of our school community, because we broadcast this live, then you should have a link below to join our community, which is completely free for the first 30 days. It'll give you an experience of our community. We're a vibrant community of coaches who are actually helping you build your business and your mastery and your skill sets as a coach. We're looking for active coaches who are trying to build their coaching business, who are wanting to build their coaching business, who can dedicate at least 10 to 12 hours a week. If you fit into that category, try us out. Click on the link, join. You will not get charged in the beginning. You have 30 days to cancel it. You will go through a lot of resources, a lot of accountability, support, questions answered, and our course that you're going to go through that will be transformative for you. Make sure you join us if you fit that description. And we're only looking for coaches who are building their coaching business. If you're just a coach who is thinking about building your coaching business or considering it, I would say don't waste your time and energy. We wouldn't even want you to join the community. You can listen to the podcast until you're ready, and then you can join our community. But let's jump in. Are you a distracted coach? What do we mean by that? How do we get that started, Daniel? What are your thoughts?
The first reminder that comes to me is something we talked about this week in our 90-day client creation challenge in Coaching Master Community. That's who sponsors the podcast. We talked about when you're doing outreach and networking within your network. And this applies not just in your network, but in general, about how are you moving forward with generating some leads, nurturing those leads, and getting them into sessions and coaching. And a lot of the time, people say they want to be doing it, but they're not doing it, or they're not doing it much. And there's a few different objections that come up in their mind subconsciously often, and it stops them from moving forward. And then we start doing other things. And those other things are what I would call distractions, especially if those things are not relevant to nurturing those clients and turning the people into clients. They're not relevant to your coaching business. Sometimes they're not even relevant at all in your life. whatever level of distraction we're talking about, there's like different levels of distraction, right? There's the deceptive distraction that you feel like it's part of the business, it's running your business forward, but it's not. And then there's the unrelated distraction, like I'm going to do something else because I don't really want to move forward in this area because it's it's one of those objections, the objections where it's uncomfortable, I'm not confident, or I don't have time, money, or believe I have enough people with scarcity, or what was the last one? Or I'm overwhelmed. Like whatever the excuse was, or the feeling was, it leads us to these distractions that are not the things we intended to do. And that to me is the definition of distraction. It's like the thing that took you elsewhere instead of the place you needed to be right now to what's important.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I want to also circle back and frame what do we, so what is, we would have to define what's not a distracted coach before we can even go into what is a distracted coach. So we'll give you our assumption is a coach who is not distracted is actually connecting with his or her potential clients and moving them towards conversations, whether it's in a group setting or one-on-one setting, and it's going towards a proposal to join your the coach's program, whether it's a group coaching program or one-on-one coaching program. But there's a series of conversations that are happening or nurturing that's happening that's leading to a proposal. Which means that if you're most coaches who are starting out, they're focused on one-on-one, which means that for you to make a proposal to somebody, you need to take them through some kind of process, nurturing process. And we also call that a sales process, which means that you might have an initial conversation as you get connected with somebody, or they might see some kind of post or content, or they might see you at an event, or you might network with them, have an initial conversation, figuring out how you can support them. And then after that, you invite them to a coaching conversation where you actually support them and help them understand what your coaching is about, and you make an offer. Of course, there are exceptions to this process, but generally speaking, that's what it looks like. You can also translate that to group model as well, where you invite them to a group workshop and make an offer that way. And there are other ways to go about this, but generally speaking, if you're gonna make proposals, you need people on your calendar to make proposals too. That is a coach who's making an effort to connect with people, to support people, send valuable resources to them, and invite them to calls and make offers to them and continue to nurture them. That is a process of you building your coaching business, and also process of you building your skill sets as well. Now, the other thing that we do within our community is that while the coaches are doing that, we actually give them feedback in their coaching process, in their sales process, in their business process within our coaching community. And if you haven't joined school, you can check it out with the link below underneath this video. But what ends up happening is we're trying to accelerate that process for coaches. Now, anything outside of that, whether you're being supported in the community, whether you are building skill sets, getting feedback, and building your sales process and connecting with people, is likely something that you shouldn't be doing right now, or shouldn't be doing at all, to be honest. And most coaches, this is where distraction comes in, where Daniel referred to, is that you will do certain things that look like you're being productive to build your business. Some examples might be you're spending hours and hours building your website. Another example might be you might be working through a course about marketing for hours and hours. Or it might be a course around personal development, has nothing to do with your business. Or it might be a series of tasks related to you building your social media presence or brand. Or you've started with a podcast and you have to do that podcast for 2 hours every day for some reason.
Or social media, or you're posting a lot to social media without any cohesive way to move people into conversations, right? Can I take over from that comment, Faisal? Because you shared so much in there. I want to pause you because there's like so many pieces of this that you shared. Number one, the thing that is a not distracted coach is doing, thing that they're doing is, I'll give it one word, Faisal, which is clienting. Everything Faisal described that the coach should be doing is called clienting. Or in other words, serving, because your clienting and your serving should be the same thing. If you're moving people into a discovery call, having a discovery call with them, that whole process should be valuable to them and to you. It's mutually beneficial. But what you're doing is actually helping these potential clients with their lives, with their goals, with whatever it is that you help them with. That's a big part. If you're not doing that part, that's a sign that you might be distracted. If you're not moving people into discovery sessions, sign you might be distracted. If you're not doing your discovery sessions, it's a sign you might be distracted. Because eventually, if you are committing, and we like to say in the 90-day client challenge, is in the vision section. That's part 1. 70-30 rule. If you spend 70% of your time clienting and serving and getting people in through the process of your to getting into your coaching program, also called sales, which you don't have to call it that if you don't want to. Serving, clienting, sales, whatever you call it. That should be 70% of your time. The rest of the time could be learning, could be participating in our community, we have a coaching chain to build your confidence, whatever it is. That should be the minority, the 30%, maybe less sometimes. 70% of your time in your coaching business should be going towards clienting. And a lot of the time, it's really easy to spend like 5 to 10% doing outreach because that could be uncomfortable. There may be a lot of reasons why we resist that. And you may not even realize you're resisting it. But if you find yourself saying like it's time, I need to build a lot of content, but not a lot of conversations, then that could be a sign that you're distracted, especially if you're in the early stages of your coaching business, the first couple of years, for sure.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that we do all sorts of weird things, and this is one of those things. If you're somebody who's smart to any degree, you're probably doing the fact that you're smart, you're finding better ways of distracting yourself. Better ways of justifying why you're doing certain things. And there are studies around this. People who are more educated, they tend to be deceived easily at times because they have better ways of making sense of certain things, and they can find better ways of convincing themselves that the thing that they're doing is right. But again, everything comes down to, for example, I'll give you an example around this where coaches will be like, well, you know what, I'm having a hard time getting clients, so I'm going to go write my book, and I think the book is going to help me get the client. It's possible. It's truly possible. But now you just created another business model that you're going to be spending the next 6 months focused on.
A project that prevents you from getting clients, actually.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it doesn't. It doesn't. And it might be necessary for, and again, the exceptions, of course, there are caveats to all this. Maybe it's part of your purpose to write that book. Like it's bigger than your business right now. Go do it. But what I'm saying is that let's say you go on writing books, or it's like, I need to get my YouTube channel to 10,000 subscribers, or I need to go speak at 10 different events. Might or might not help you. But the point is, we will do odd things to avoid the thing that's right in front of us, which is very simple. In the sales world, let's just pick up the phone or just go message somebody and serve them. It sounds very straightforward, sounds very ridiculously simple, but it is actually quite simple. The reason we complicate it is because it's uncomfortable. And we don't know what the outcome is going to be. There's a lot of uncertainty, and there is. That's what makes business hard, is because you have to build a system, a process, so you understand that you know that it's predictable for you to create a certain amount of revenue by the end of the month or every 3 months or annually. It's predictable. And eventually you will come. And here's the thing. Most coaches, they have other jobs, other businesses, other things going on, with some exceptions. Some people want to do different things because they don't feel confident that they can create a predictable source of revenue with their business. I believe that you just need to have a system and a process to do it, and you need to be confident in that process. Now, coming back to the distracted coaches, so what's keeping you distracted? And I'll give you a couple of stories around this. These are coaches that I've interacted with the past few months. I asked one of the coaches, what have you been busy with if you haven't been doing the thing that we talked about? Like, well, I went through about 17 hours of a course I'm going through. I'm like, what's the course on? Well, the course is on personal development of some kind or leadership. Great, nothing wrong, but 17 hours, literally binge watching. You could have done a lot in 17 hours. You could have reached out to 500 people in 17 hours. You could have actually had a few calls to serve people in 17 hours. You could have done lots of things in those 17 hours, but is that the most optimal use of your time? Or somebody will say that, well, I've been working on my website and I really need to get the right message in the name and the colors and all that stuff. Okay, how is that going to help you? Because even after you build the website, you need to direct traffic to it. Or I've been doing 4 hours of videos just to figure out what is the right type of video and messaging and the right title and hook and all that stuff. None of that matters. Eventually, that will matter when you have a brand, when you have when people are actually following you. But for the most part, nobody's going to even know if your website exists, if your social media post is there. Very few people will ever see it. Ultimately, it comes down to, are you reaching out to people to serve them? Whether that looks like you're going to an event and speaking on something or doing a live session, or you're reaching out to people one-on-one, or you're getting feedback for your coaching process, or you're actually working on refining your sales process, what's happening in every step of the way, or you're working through your calendar or your tracking system, whatever that looks like. If you're not doing those things, ask yourself, and the way you can figure this out is, what is the outcome I'm hoping if I do this thing in the short term and long term? And if that's not clear, you shouldn't be doing it.
I think you brought up a really important point, which is short term versus long term. A lot of distractions feel like good long term projects to build a business long term. But what we want you to do is think about, how do you build your business in the short term? How do you get people on those calls and into your coaching program so that you can deliver coaching, so that you can make some money, so you can make a difference, so you can serve those people and change their lives? Like, that is the part that, for me, like, if I look back at my career, the first couple of years, I spent a lot of time thinking about my business cards and my website and trying to create a WordPress and like learn WordPress, because I came from a tech background. I was in manufacturing and I did a lot of IT stuff. And so to me, when you come out of a different career, or if you're an expert in something, that is the lens through which you see the coaching world. Like, I thought, oh yeah, you just talk to people and they give you money. Okay, so it's easy. So let me work on the things that I know how to do. Like, this is the subconscious, like, mental train, and let me do some IT type stuff that I'm really comfortable with. So yeah, oh, I gotta learn how to do WordPress because I didn't do that before. Okay, so now I got a project that I love. Like, let me, and honestly, the WordPress stuff took me so long. It was just like super complicated. I'm gonna build my own WordPress site. What was I thinking? Like, that was not where I want to spend my time. But it was where it was comfortable to spend my time. And because the things that were uncomfortable, which at some level I knew I needed to get people on calls to sell them coaching, but I didn't know how to sell because I didn't have the discovery session masterclass and training that we have in Coaching Mastery community. I didn't have a community to support me and to let me know I'm not doing the right thing like we have now. If CMC existed back then, it would have been so much better, because I would have stopped these distractions so much faster just by, in the community, we post once a week, like, what are you doing this week? How's your progress going? And then you have to say, or you can choose to hide, but better to just say, here's what I'm doing. So we can tell you, okay, that's probably a distraction. Why are you doing that? We can actually have the conversation with you and tell you, like, actually, this is not achieving the thing you said you wanted to achieve, because you're not doing the conversations, right? You know who you are if you're listening to this podcast as a member. So we're really trying to encourage people to, like, skip that whole learning curve of distraction, because what it is, it's an emotional thing. It's an emotional feeling we get of overwhelm or resistance, because we are not comfortable in this new identity, in this new skill set, in this new world, this new business. It's a business of how to do those things. And sometimes when you don't know how to do things, it's easier to just do something else. One of the other things I did when I was, what year was this? 2018, I want to say. Whatever year it was, I was living in Chicago and I had just moved there, quit my job, and I was just starting coaching, and I had no clients yet, no paying clients anyway. I had done a few free things for colleagues or whatever, but for ex-colleagues from work. But what I had done is I signed up for a triathlon, like an Olympic length triathlon, and I trained, and I spent a lot of time training, and I had to learn how to swim. I spent all this time doing that, which was amazing. I gotta say, like, it was one of my goals to do that, and one of my goals to get in best shape of my life, which I totally did. What I didn't do is my other goal of make my coaching business work. Because you know what? Learning how to do a triathlon and swim felt easier at some level than building my coaching business. So
that's so crazy.
I could have done both. But it was easier to approach that physical feat than it was to approach the mental feat. It's like crazy. I like a week, like 2 weeks before the triathlon, I still couldn't do the mile in the open water, and so I was just like,
yeah. So it was funny. I remember a few years ago in the beginning stages, like I had these little moments that I would get like a couple hours here every day, or 1 hour, and I would do it, and I would always be frustrated, like, and it was the worst mind frame that I had at the time, in terms of, like, I had my daughter was young, and I had to help my wife at times with that, and then I was working as well, and just going back and forth with this. I was like, I just want like 4 hours straight of work. I just want even the 1 hour I was spending, I was barely doing anything that was useful to begin with. So I wasn't even utilizing the 1 or 2 hours that I had, but I wanted like 6 more hours in a day. So eventually, it's like, I still remember this. My wife's gonna hate this, but she knows this at this point. At some point, she wanted to go visit her grandparents in Europe, and I was like, yes, she's gonna be gone for 3 weeks with my daughter. It was like the
It's so
worst thing.
productive.
I was excited. Of course, I was gonna miss it, but I was because I had kind of made an excuse in my mind that they were the source of my distraction.
Uh-huh.
I was so off. So they went, and I'm like, okay, I need to decompress like a day. I it became 2, 3 days. I don't know how 3 weeks went by. I remember going to pick them up from the airport. I felt shame. Like I felt so much shame that all these months and years I kind of blamed them, but it was me. It was all me that I was distracting myself in this. After that, I'm like, you know what? I got 2 hours every day. I'm just gonna be focused on doing whatever it requires to move my business. I didn't even think about longer times or anything. 2 hours, 5 days a week. Outside of that's my time with my family, and that actually started the whole process of like almost everything I would think, I would assess it through that lens. Am I making an excuse in that area? Am I blaming somebody else, or am I taking responsibility? And am I utilizing that time that I do have? It was like it was such a big transformation for me because I was like for 2 years I thought like this. A year and a half, 2 years I thought like this. Now imagine had that been caught a little bit ahead, I would have thought very differently. I would have actually utilized the time that I did have instead of looking for 2 weeks out, 1 week out, or 4 hour days for me to focus on. And unfortunately, many people don't have that time. Many of the coaches who are getting started, they need to work a job. Some of them have families. So the time that you do have can be utilized. And this is why I tell coaches, you don't need more than 10 to 12 hours a week. In fact, you shouldn't be focusing so much time more than that if you have another thing going, because you can actually make your money and be comfortable and build this out as a side hustle, whatever you want to look at it, until you get confident that you can create clients. Once you get confident in your system and creating clients, you can make the decision very quickly to leave the other thing if you want to. But if you're not confident, I don't even. So there are coaches that I meet who have like 4 or 5 clients, and they're actually making good money, but they're not confident in recreating that same thing. They don't have a process and they don't know how to recreate it. They've kind of gotten a few clients here and there somehow, but they don't know how to make it. In fact, we have a few clients in the community like that. And I understand that because I had that for a while too. I couldn't leave Uber because I knew that if I run out of this, then how am I going to find? One, I was afraid. Two, I didn't have a process. So we want you to build that, and again, it always comes down to your thinking frame. It always comes down to what you're focused on. And also, I will say this is not even a lot of it is not even your fault. The online world is set up in a way, especially at the higher marketing level, where coaches are told that, well, if you learn to market very well, you're going to be the best coach. It has some truth to it, but most of the coaching business is not marketing. It's actually a sales process. If you're not good at sales, you could be great at marketing, promoting yourself, but then if your sales process is not working out, it's a problem. And I'll tell you, I have marketing. We have marketing agencies that we've hired for CMC and for my own business too. What they're good at is putting your content out. But they're not good at is what happens when the customer comes in and what process they go through within your
Somebody's
system.
got to do the hard work of being the person to convert them into a coaching client, right?
Yeah. So you could, even if you had a lot of people coming in, it might not mean anything. This is the objection towards paid. Like a lot of coaches look for easy ways to get leads, and they will go spend money on ads. Let's say you even get it. It's hard to do that anyway. You get a bunch of leads, you won't even know how to convert them. You'll waste a bunch of money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ironic. We spend a lot of time trying. It's like I think I spent a lot of time trying to set up the long-term system instead of the short-term system, because the long-term system doesn't make sense, because by the time your short-term system starts to work, the view of the long-term has changed. It's the doing it that helps you learn what is important in a long-term system, right? For you, it's like a lot of coaches start out thinking they have to have their avatar perfect, but the truth is, through coaching, through the process of getting people into discovery sessions, selling them your programs, through coaching them through that program, which takes months, right? Months and months of multiple clients over a long period of time, you start learning about who you like coaching and who you're good at coaching and who likes you and who you can appeal to, what your ideal target market might be, right? And so like if you say I have to decide that now and you're stuck in that area, it may actually hurt your ability to do that because you're not totally sure about that. So like I would say like the most important thing probably at the beginning, for not everybody, there's exceptions for sure, for most people, is just get people into calls and convert them into clients. And what that also means is make a difference for them. If you're making a difference for somebody, they're going to be much more likely to become your client. So think about getting clients, think about making enough difference so that people will want to become your client long term because you're going to help them so much. That's the goal, right? And so in the short term, really, ultimately, if you notice that you're blaming other people for your lack of progress, if you're blaming circumstances, as Faisal said before, he's blaming his family at some level, then that's a sign that you're not taking that responsibility. And here's an easy way to take responsibility, really easy. There's just 2 activities you need to do. We talked about this week a little bit in Coaching Mastery community. We talked about, number 1, get people on calls. Number 2, do our discovery process that we teach in Coaching Mastery community. If you want to join us for free for 30 days, watch that and cancel. By all means, just learn how to do that. Take them through that discovery call and get them to start coaching with you. Yeah. Get them on your calendar and then get them a discovery call. And 70% of your time should be spent on that. And if you're not spending 70% of your time on making that happen, then think about what is the reason or the excuse or the blame that you're casting to avoid that responsibility. Like for me, I'll just give you right now in my life, I have a very young child. I have 2 young children. One is an infant still. And today our babysitter canceled. I'm supposed to be clienting this morning a little bit, but that's not going to happen. And I'm okay with that because that's not a distraction. Like your family is not necessarily a distraction unless it's the thing you're blaming for your lack of progress. But like, yeah, I'm going to show up for my family. I'm going to be there. I'm going to hold the baby. I was going to do this podcast with the baby, but my wife and I are trading back and forth. I wouldn't call that a distraction. That is a real thing in life that I made an intentional choice to balance my life that way. Not to say that I didn't get distracted this week. I did. I'm in overwhelm mode because I have a young baby. So whatever your life is right now, there are reasons and there are excuses. And so I want you to distinguish between like, what's a reason and what's an excuse for you. And if you want to hint, the excuses are things that you didn't really need to do. like for example, I started scrolling on my news app last night. I didn't need to do that. I should have got to sleep. I fell asleep doing it. Fortunately, after only 10 minutes, but it could have been like half an hour before I realized what was going on because that was distraction. I will fully admit that, right? And that's not the only time I've done that. There's a lot going on for me. So I have some things that are reasons and some things that are excuses and distractions. And if you're really, really feeling tired, then you got to think about how much you have going on and whether you can actually dedicate the time to coaching. So if you can carve out that 10 hours a week minimum, 10 to 12 hours, we say, even 2 hours a day. And here's the trick I was referring to. The trick is you just need 5 to 10 minutes at a time. When I built my entire giant spreadsheet, I spent hours and hours and weeks building a spreadsheet before actually implementing it, making all the nice colors and tracking the people. And then only 2 months later, after actually implementing it, 2 months of implementation, I got tired because I wasn't making fast enough progress. And right before, I probably would have made some really great clienting conversions. But what I could have done is just been a little bit messier, being willing to be a little bit less organized, and just like have a list of people and every day spend 5 to 10 minutes thinking through, sit down at my table, nothing else to do. Who's on my list today? That is the simplest, easiest way. If you have 5 to 10 minutes and you're not using it for a distraction, you now can use it for moving your life forward. And if your coaching business is a very important priority in your life, spend those 5 to 10 minutes just thinking through, like, who do I need to get back to? Who is that person that just waiting for me or that I haven't followed up with? Just write their names down or put it on a whiteboard or just have a paper. You don't have to have a complicated system, especially at first. And I want you to not worry about system complexity and start worrying about actual implementation and iteration. Your system will evolve out of you doing the 5 to 10 minutes at a time, once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day over time. Eventually be half an hour, 2 hours a day, like Faisal said. If you whatever you can get, go, just make sure you're doing something.
Yeah, for sure. And which kind of begs there are 2 things you mentioned that's really powerful. One is measuring your progress. The other one is getting feedback and accountability. And both are important. Before I go into that, I'll just clarify a couple of pieces in there. The piece about long-term, a lot of times we think we are thinking, we're not. Like when we're in this mode where, I'm building a whole system in complexity. We're thinking long-term. We're not. We're just delaying the short-term thing that's uncomfortable. That's not actually thinking long-term. We actually have a frame, think long-term, think a decade out how your business will look like. but you need to build the prerequisites for the foundations for that business to be built. And one of the foundations is you actually need to learn how to talk to people, invite them to conversations, and do that whole process. And you do it enough times so you understand what the process is like, and slowly you're going to build systems around it. Some of the systems might be your calendar system, other systems might be tracking systems, other system might be how your outreach processes. You learn as you go, and then eventually you're going to have somebody who's going to do that for you, who's going to support you to do that. The coaching business is not that complicated. You can run a $1 million business with 2 or 3 team members max. You don't need that many people and very basic systems. But if you think long term, you will know that you'll understand that at some point you're going to have more clients that you can handle. So it will need to be scaled. But before you even go there, you need to build the foundations. And the foundations for your coaching business is actually your own skill sets. If you're not working on your skill sets as a coach, if you're not working on your sales process, even if you brought a person, you could afford to bring a person, they wouldn't be able to help you out because they don't know how to help you out in that process. So think long term, but the foundations to do the thing that's uncomfortable is the key. Every time you think you're thinking long term and you're building complex systems or working on your website and other things, you're thinking that's for my brand, that's usually a delay tactic from your mind. Because the easy thing to do is to do the triathlon. I had a client who he regularly jumps from a plane, skydives, but he was deathly afraid to reach out to people in the real estate investing world. I'm like, do you not see the comedy in that whole thing?
It's hilarious. It's like what is the definition of hard for you, right? The thing that's
Yeah.
hard is actually the thing that you need to face and do. And like, to me, a triathlon was hard, but it wasn't as hard as facing the new thing that I was trying to do in my life.
But there's an honesty there, right? When you become honest, like the other one is harder. The other one is more, it's not hard in the sense of doing it. Actually, triathlon might be much harder to do even with but it's incredibly uncomfortable because it requires courage. You have to put yourself out there. What if it doesn't work out? What if you suck? What if there are a lot of things that will kind of get revealed? And I think the process of building a business is actually a growth process because you might actually suck. It might actually be true. You might actually not have a really good process. People might not gain as much value as you think they will gain. You might not be able to give people results. By the way, all of which have been true for me. And there was a point where I sat there and I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm as good as I think I am. What would I need to do to be better? And that was
the thing you need to do to be better is just keep on going. Keep on doing those calls. Get people on calls. Give them as much value as you can. Get feedback from having done that. Ask them for feedback. And sign them as a client if they think it's valuable. If it's not, keep on going, because you got to build your skill set. Just like when you start whatever job you're doing before coaching, if you were in another career, it took you time. You couldn't just come in and be the VP or be the president or could you be a CEO right out of college? No. Why? Because you have to learn some things. You got to learn by doing it. You got to learn by doing, right? So like, just keep on working at it. This is a long-term process. It's not gonna be snap your fingers easy. Some people come in with actual sales skills, and it still can be hard for them because there's other parts of the business or the coaching part that don't come natural. So like, at least they have that benefit. But the pieces of you need to be having experience. You need to be getting experience as a coach. You need to be getting experience as a salesperson, which, by the way, is really the same thing if you think about it, but you can separate them out that way. You need to be getting experience at business. Like, those are like different ways that you will grow and get experience. And if you do that for a year and fumble through it, you're going to be way better than if you just started. And don't do what I did, is avoid all 3 of those things and do other things so I can get really good at not building a website. You know?
I did that too. I spent weeks on my website that didn't do anything. But the key here to take away is focus on the areas that actually move the business forward in the short term, that sets the foundation for you to build the long-term business. The long term is that there's a lot of potential here, and a lot of coaches might say that there's a lot of competition out there. Actually, there's very little competition in the coaching world. There are a lot of people coming into the coaching world, but if you actually look at the track record of coaches, most coaches don't stay past 2-3 years, maybe 4 years. It's crazy. Like 90% of them will not be around. Like, we were at the coaches coaching summit with Brendan. Remember, at the end, he got all of us to get up, the ones who have been there for a while. There were like a handful of people standing around who act, and I know all of them, what kind of businesses they have, what's going on. Even with them, there are very few of them have actually have sustainable business.